Here's some things to think about, to keep in mind when you're doing a Smartcore vinyl plank flooring, or any vinyl plank for that matter. I'll show you what I'm up against here. A Jack and Jill bathroom, sink and toilet on the one bedroom side, doorway, then the tub, shower, and closet shared area through another doorway to the other bathroom side, which is a toilet and a sink, to the other bedroom. First, decide if you're going left to right or front to back with your layout, and then you can start getting some of this stuff out of your way, the prep work. I think a razor knife between the shoe molding and the baseboard, that's going to help it come off a little cleaner. Whether it's painted or varnished, it's still going to help not chip or do as much damage. But a small flat bar to get started. I am going to do some caulking and painting when I'm done, so I'm going to touch this up. Get your registers out of the way. Try to pry where the nails are, and just take your time, especially if you're going to reuse it. You don't want to break this stuff. And then if you are reusing it, if you have a pair of these close nip pliers, those are real nice for pulling these wire nails out. You just grab them tight at the bottom and rock them sideways, and it pulls those nails right out. And then you can set all this shoe molding aside for when you go to put it back in. Next thing to consider would be the doorways, your transition. Ideally, the flooring transition halfway underneath the door itself is ideal. If for some reason, you know, the flooring's bad or something, if you have to go all the way under the door or all the way to the inside of the door, that would probably be okay, but halfway is probably the best. My layout's going to start right here at the tub. It's the most visual place in this whole project, so I'm going to start there with a full piece, and then once I get into the bathroom side, I can work backwards on each side, and then from there it should be easy for a little bit anyways, moving forward. But here's where I'm going to start, is right in front of the tub. Next thing would be getting to cutting the jambs. Get a piece of scrap flooring, and I have an oscillating jam saw here. I kind of sped this up a little bit because I know it's boring, but just make sure you get all the way through it and you're taking your time. You don't want to rush and you know, have your saw run up the wall or something because you're trying to jam it in there too hard. And I am overcutting into the baseboard a little bit. The baseboard's sitting right on the floor, so I have to overcut that a little bit too. Because your flooring is going to have to go past a little bit, past the door casing, because your shoe molding stops right there at the door casing. Get you another angle here with this, overcutting the baseboard. If your baseboard's already up, then you don't have to worry about this, but if it's all the way down on the floor, you're going to want to overcut it a little bit. You can see my scrap piece here. You slide it up under there past the door casing a little bit, because your shoe molding is going to stop right there at the door casing. You know, a goofy, you know, little hole that you can see right there. Just keep going around your door jambs. I got a lot of these, so I'm just going to show you one real quick. There again, take your time. Nice sharp blade makes for a really nice job if you take your time and do the prep work in a nice way. You can usually feel when the blade gets through the jam. Take your screwdriver, a little chisel, and you can tell it'd be obvious if you didn't cut it all the way, because it won't come out. So just keep poking at it until you get all the pieces out of there, and work your way around the door, all the way around the jam, the casing, and into the baseboard on both sides on all your doorways. And then once you get all the pieces out of there and get all your jams cut, I suggest going around with a shop vac and getting all the dust and the crud and the chunks out, you know, you might have missed underneath the door. But just make sure they're nice and clean under there so you don't run into any of this stuff when you're running the floor. Next thing for me would be getting this bead of caulking off of the tub. I took a straight razor, cut it loose from the floor and the tub, and then cleaned it off real good, because that's where my first piece is going to start, right up against the tub, and I want it to be sit flat on the floor and tight to the tub. My very first row, I had to cut the tongue off of most of it. I left it on the two corners, and I'll show you why, because I have, it's hitting on that side, it's tight in the middle, and it's hitting on that side. So that gives me about a 1/16 of an inch gap to silicone when I'm all done. So after I got that first piece fitted, I'm going to start in the middle of this one and go out so I can get past both doorways on this second row. Getting underneath here, when you mark your jambs, you want to be just inside the jam, just barely. I mean, if you're 1/8 of an inch, that's plenty, just so you don't see a gap there. And then from the groove on the first piece to just underneath the door casing is where you want to be. And then mark that. And then on the outside, I mark the skinny part of the door casing, and then I'm going to taper my cuts, and that'll guarantee me that I'm underneath the door casing on both sides. So once I slide that in, you'll be able to see. And what I did, I just wanted to make sure that it was going to, that I cut enough out of it and it is going to connect. And then I went to the other side. I left that piece in, that first piece, and I'm over here marking this piece now. Same thing, just inside the jam, and the skinny part of the door casing is my next mark, and then from the other piece out. So these tapered cuts, it looks kind of funny, but it works. So and that'll get me underneath there, so I'm completely underneath the jam and the casing. My first piece, I made a little reference mark on the groove of the first piece there, so I could pull the whole thing out and attach those first two rows together using that reference mark. After I got them hooked together, then I pushed the whole thing back in nice and tight, and then I could start working on getting into the other bathrooms and working backwards from there. So now that I'm satisfied with that, you get a couple rows going, so make sure it's nice and straight, and then we can work backwards from here to the back before we start to move forward again. This very first piece, I had to make sure I was under the door casing. It was really close there, so what I did was I just tapered that cut there. I made it tight on the bottom so it was under the door casing, and then tapered a little bit to give me a little bit of a gap there. And there again, same thing on both sides. I had to taper that first piece, but the rest of it, you could use cut-off pieces and put joints everywhere, but I had enough flooring that I opted just to do solid pieces all the way back to the back. And then I did have a little bit of crooked from left to right in this corner. It's better to have your crooked somewhere besides, like if you had crooked in front of the tub, you're going to see it like a sore thumb. If it's back there, you're really not going to tell behind the toilet. If you're up under the toe kick, that's not really going to matter if it's a little bit crooked. If it's in the back of the closet, that last piece is not really going to matter if it's a little bit crooked. That piece in front of the tub is mostly what you're going to see in here. So after I got those ran back, I put a screw behind the flooring rather than a shim. If you have room to put it through the flooring, you can. It's tight there against the tub. I don't have to worry about that moving, but on the left and right side, I got a screw right behind the flooring. So when I pound on these pieces moving forward, I'm not jamming the whole floor backwards. It just takes the place of a shim. So as I'm beating on this thing, I don't have to worry about it going anywhere. The next hard transition part is going to be this doorway here. Getting through these, hey, you can see all these jams and stuff I got to deal with here. You could do two pieces if you wanted to. I don't think it really matters, but you are going to be fighting just one more seam in the middle there. I'm going to take a different route, and I'm going to use a full piece to get past both doorways, just get them both over with at once. So after I cut my piece to fit, I made a little mark there on the floor because I'm going to have to take the groove part, the part that locks onto the adjacent piece. I'm going to take that off with a sharp chisel. You can see that little bumpy part on that lip. I'm going to take that off so the two pieces will slide together rather than having to beat them together, because you won't be able to pick them up. So I took it's a super sharp chisel. Just go nice and easy and just take that edge off. I got the flashlight down there because it makes a little shadow line, and I can tell when I have most of that groove off of there. So after you get that cleaned off, I took some good wood glue, some Tite Bond, and run it on that whole edge that I took off. And then my little beater block, nice and easy. Don't beat the crap out of this thing. Just nice tap, tap, tap until it falls in there. And then all you have to do, most of the time you can pull it backwards. I'm pretty tight underneath these jambs. So my little beater block, just tap it in across there, because you're not going to be able to tip it up like you have to get them to lock. So by doing that, that's going to lock those two pieces together with that glue, get any ooze out. And here again, when you're making your cuts, just make sure you're barely underneath your trim when you cut these things, so it has room to move forward, back, and side to side a little bit, because it does have to move. So here on my next piece, I got to take the lip off of the butt side too, and then maybe about halfway down, because this piece stops just short of the next doorway, so I will be able to snap that side of it. So after I got that in and glued and tapped in, I had this little piece. I treated the same way with the glue and the tapping and all that. Don't be afraid of these little pieces. Every once in a while you're going to have one, so it doesn't look terrible. It's okay. Your last piece under this toe kick, or mine, I'm going to cut it 1/4 of an inch short to accommodate this pull bar. So that's going to get under there and help me lock that last piece. So I'm going to cut it 1/4 of an inch short so my bar will fit in there and my shoe molding will still cover. Give it a little tap in a couple spots. I did tip it up to get it started, and then a few taps to lock it in, and there you're done. That was the only, those pieces in the up under the sinks were nice and straight. This is the only side that had a little bit of crooked in it. So after you get your floor all in, make sure you go around, take out any screws or shims or anything that you put behind the flooring, get all that out. And then I clear silicone in front of the tub, make sure I get it down in that crack. You don't want to gob this stuff all over the place, but I also like to run it down the side away from the tub a little ways, because that's the water prone areas right there next to the tub, especially where the spigot is or the faucet. And then I make sure I get enough silicone under there before I put my shoe molding back on. And then I know if it gets splashed or a little bit of water sits there, it's not going to create a problem, like most of them do around tubs. So yeah, a little bit of silicone, that'll let this thing move a little bit. It is flexible, but it leaves a nice joint in front of the tub there. I do have a bifold door. Those 2 screws is enough to hold this bracket back in. If you have to put the one in the floor, drill an oversized hole so the floor can move. But usually those 2 screws in the wall is enough to hold those brackets for you, and you don't have to worry about that. Last thing I like to do is replace the shutoffs, the supply lines and stuff on all these. My new floor is about 1/4 inch high off the toilet flange. So I opted for this, it's a Danko Perfect Seal It does have a wax ring. These things are actually pretty nice for certain scenarios. I put one of these in my house downstairs, and I really like them. This thing is going to make sure, rather than putting shims, flange shims and all that, you can see how beefy this thing is. And it still has the wax inside of it. There's a couple different screw hole, bolt holes, a big hole and a small hole, depending on what size bolt you have. But that just sits on top just like a wax ring would. And then your toilet goes on top of that. So I really like those things. They seem to work really well as far as sealing and not having to worry about it. So project's all done. The shoe molding's back in. The paint's touched up. Toilets are in. Registers and whatnot. So yeah, you can see where it really counts in front of that tub. Nice clean edge there, nice and straight. A little bit of silicone. Makes for a really nice job if you take your time around all these door jambs and stuff. So yeah, if you got one of these projects, whether it's Smartcore, vinyl plank, some of these things might not work for like a laminate type floor, but the vinyl plank flooring is pretty forgiving as far as doing this type of stuff with it. So transitions turned out real nice. So all in all, a good project, and it turned out really nice. So yeah, I hope that helped you out.